Hi, Kat. How you doing? All right. I realized after I had it all set and did an overview print that the text was too close to the edge. Boy, that gives me a lot of information, Kat. It really does. It tells me two things. Number one, you printed this out. That's smart. That's smart. And I'll tell you what, as a student, you should be printing your work out, all of your work, because it looks totally different in print than it will ever look on screen. You just will never get the same appreciation. So I was really pleased to see that you printed these out. Um, Let me see. I'm not too sure how to fix it blowing away the grid. Establish it though. Okay, so you're saying that the text is too close to the edge. How do you fix that without blowing away the grid? It's easy. What you do is this. Hold on one sec. I'll describe that in 1 second. Grid steps, though it's still abide by modular format. Just curious, how did other people put their grid in? What dimensions did you pick? That's interesting. And in a way, I would amend. I would like to take this assignment and I would like to add one requirement to it, and that is to superimpose the grid over this work so we can see how the work adheres to the grid. And I think I might request that we do that in the next for the next class. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it would be helpful as a student to see how other students' work adheres to the grid? I think it would be fantastic. I really do. So, at any rate, let's jump to your compositions. Okay, now how do you work with the margins without blowing out the grid completely? And it's really easy. There's a couple of things you can do now. If you're in InDesign, if we jump over to the course announcements right over here, and I'm sure you've read these, Kat, you seem to be all over. As you have, I say that because you have corrected me a couple of times, for which I truly appreciate. Now we've got no more broken links, folks. Thanks to Kat. Thanks, Kat. So it doesn't surprise me. I'm sure you've probably already read through the announcement for week 3. Here's the announcements. Great information in here. The video, great lecture right here. Resources. Here's how to create and use a modular grid. Recognize this right down here, Kat. I had used that as a response to one of your inquiries, and I thought it was valuable, so I left it right here in the announcement. But at any rate, this right here is establishing a grid in InDesign. And in InDesign, boy, you know, as fantastic as Adobe is, there are some UX issues I think that could be dealt with in Adobe. And I think one of the things is this. InDesign has this wonderful feature that when you set your grid and establish your grid, you can set it to either the margin or the page. I always set it to the margin. The difference would be this. The difference would be these are all set. These grids are set to the margin. You can see that margin established over here. This is set to the margin. So this inner square right here is the margin. We can see the grid is set to the margin. That's of relevant importance because the grid starts whatever your margin is, a quarter, an inch or whatever. That's where your grid starts. So in InDesign, it gives you an option to set your grid to your margin or your page. So as long as you set your margins, you can establish your grid to the margins, and that will establish those relationships that you're talking about without completely blowing out the grid. I thought that was a great question. In Illustrator, you set up your grid. What I would do is this, okay? So you've got your 5 by 5 square, right? What I would do is I would take this in about 1/2 inch, then draw another square inside here, okay? And then in Illustrator, you'll establish your grid based on that interior square, okay? And if you just Google how to set up a grid using using Illustrator, that comment will make a lot more sense, because what you do in Illustrator is you set your square or your rectangle, then you establish the grid based on the rectangle. So what we'll do is we'll set another square in here, set the grid to that. That will establish your margins. Hope that makes sense. It's pretty important. Let me know if I can clarify on that. Okay, yes, you are definitely encroaching. You're right on the page edge. These all areas right here, these are all considered to be no print zones. And you definitely want to respect your pages of your composition as well as your established margins. Okay, important stuff. All right, first composition, you have successfully created groups, and the only hierarchy here is based on grouping. That's fantastic. One thing I would recommend here is that we look like we have 3 different groups, right? But right now, the viewer can look at this and go, does this type here, Does this line belong with this line? And it's hard to say, does this line belong to this line? And the reason it's hard to say, they almost look like they're separate. Close down the leading a little bit here, just to make sure that the viewer knows that this and this belong together. Well, in this case, it's a continuation of the sentence, so you definitely want to close down that leading right here. Because right here, this leading looks good. There's no question that this is all one related thought. These look to be unrelated based on that space between. Okay, second composition, you have introduced one new size and one new weight. There's your new weight, here's your new size. The problem here, there's two problems with this composition, other than what I've mentioned before about respecting the margins. The problems here are alignment and also your type size. So you've established a weight here, but the size here is larger than the size here. Even though you've established visual weight here, kind of recommending that the viewer start right here with the headline, which makes sense, right? But this type is maybe even larger than this type. So the viewer is confronted with this problem of saying, okay, I don't know where to look first because this is heavier, but this is bigger. So what do I do? And as one thing we know as designers, viewers don't like to think. Viewers like to know exactly where you want them to go. So the fix here would just be reduce this type size a little bit. Right now here, this whole section right here has multiple alignments, okay? This first 3 lines is left aligned, okay? Then over here, you're indented, but you're right aligned, but you're also outdented here because you're not going to the page, and not that you want to because we talked about margins, right? But so this is left aligned, this is right aligned with an indent, but it's pulled in too far, there's no alignment here. And then this is also right aligned. Okay, so what I would recommend here in this particular layout is to, after you reduce the size, go ahead and left align all of these, okay? And then reduce the size, reduce the leading. So that's one group, that's the second group, that's the third group, okay? And then bring that down and make sure there's some separation here between this and this. But there's your perfect alignment right there. And you know what? You don't have to center align this. You can pull this over to the edge of the grid, and then you can use that as your alignment for your type, and then bring that back over and align it with the headline. Okay. Now, in the third composition, we're to introduce multiple contrasts in scale and weight, which you've done, right? So I think this is pretty good. You know, we still have some issues here, and I don't think you're using the whole grid. I mean, right now you've got this. Again, we've got this centered. You've got everything pushed over to the right, so you can bring this into one of your grid marks maybe and just align this somewhere and bring this in to get away from that margin. We talked about that, right? Okay, and now this, I think this is also establishing pretty good hierarchy. The problem I'm having here is that, so we go like this. We say, all right, so this is the heaviest, so that's where you want the viewer to look. This is the next heaviest. So the viewer very clearly starts the composition here and then moves over here, all right? This, I think, is an issue because the viewer looks here, comes over here, then automatically comes down here. Then it's kind of forced to make a decision. Do I go over here next or do I go down here? It seems like the designer wants me to go over here, but that's a weird eye jump going here, 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 and then here. The eye zigzagging across the page. We don't want to do that. We want the eye to gently move to up and down or across the page without this kind of zigzag here, 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 over here, back over here. See what I'm saying? I'm not real oh, by the way, this is black and white, no color in the fourth composition. Good job bleeding. You're bleeding in 3 areas. So technically, if we jump over to the assignment, we see the fourth composition. A crop portion along with any number of sizes and weights. Your image must violate the grid some way and also bleed off the page in at least 2 places. I'm sorry, I'm stand corrected. You are bleeding in 3 places. 1, 2, 3. I thought it was required 2, so that's fine. The one thing I'm having an issue with in this particular composition is I'm not real sure if placing text over the car is working, which is going to kind of sets up another set of problems, is how do you scale that car so you can fix the type, or fit the type, I should say. Just think that the type is just not working on top of the car itself. Now, I want to show you an example, all right? And I want you to study this example, Kat, before you resubmit, all right? This is the example right here. It's also located in the discussion board, and right here. It's just look for my post and you'll see it. This is a really great example, and it's worth studying. So what we see, of course, you definitely want to go and study the course announcement. Also the textbook reading, and specifically page 101 in the textbook, which basically shows you how to do this exercise. Why is this successful? Okay, we've got separation here based on grouping, placement, proximity. Okay, so this all is related, this is all related, this is related, and this is related. And the reason we perceive those as being related is because based on proximity and placement. Okay, is this related with this? Yes, it is. Why? Because of that alignment right there. So as you can see, if we place this here, and then place this over here, and then place this down here, and then place this over here, they don't have this solid relationship. Right now, the alignment is telling the viewer that these are separate, but they are all related based on the alignment, right? Same thing here. So that's why typographic alignment is so important. All right, so we've got differences based on grouping, proximity. Over here, we've introduced one new size, one new weight. Okay. Then over here, we've introduced multiple sizes, multiple weights. And then over here, we've introduced multiple sizes, multiple weights, along with that black and white image of the car bleeding on two areas of the composition. So this is really a fantastic job right here. So definitely study that. Now, naturally, your second submission, Kat's going to be superior to your first. But really, listen, I'm sorry I'm going on 12 minutes here. I don't like to critique that long, because by the time you're done, you guys are like, all right, guy, I got it. Be quiet. I think 12 minutes is a long time for a video critique, so I apologize for that. But at any rate, absorb this. Think about it. Sleep on it. When you approach this again, you're going to see it with fresh eyes, with a fresh mind. It's going to be superior, I promise. All right, any questions at all, please let me know. Thanks, Kat.